Do you have a city that can withstand the rainfall that falls in this city? You can't keep pointing to nature. You've set up your city over here. This is where you do your global investors meet. So to suddenly say that this place received a lot of rainfall, I'm saying there'll be more rainfall than this. Are you capable of handling it? Can we hear the government say, maybe not now, in another week's time, say that we have messed up? Our development policies are messed up. That we have prioritized commercial, industrial, residential real estate over the security of the city. Your biggest stormwater drain is the Adyar or the Kuam or the Kosastaliyar. So you can't be killing those rivers with elevated expressways on the Kuam, with all kinds of encroachments in power plants and ports and other things on the Kosastaliyar, with other things on the Adyar. It's not just this government. Successive governments have done the same thing. So it is not as if the government that is in power now has to suddenly face the wrath of the government that was sitting in, or the party that's sitting in opposition, because the party that's sitting in opposition was the party in power in 2015. Well, it is not just areas like Pallikarnai, Velachery and Madipakam, but also a large area of very densely populated neighborhoods in North Chennai, which are completely off the radar. The kind of attention that I don't think that, I'm not saying that Velachery should not get attention, definitely must. People need to be rescued, but then the same level of investment must be made across the city. Otherwise it can only be seen as discrimination. North Chennai has not been receiving the kind of attention it deserves. So things have not improved. In fact, I just had a call. There's been a lot of calls coming in for relief material. People have, they've set up community kitchens, but there's no rations to cook. So the vulnerable people have been removed in many of these instances, but for the people who remain, and we're talking about, say, just the slum clearance board buildings in Vyasarpadi, there is a group called Vyasai Thodargal that runs a community kitchen. They've been feeding about 1,000 people every day, but now they're out of rations. They have cooking fuel, they have a place where they can cook, there are people who want to eat, but there's no rations and no way to reach it to them. I don't think we need to be worried about more rainfall or less rainfall. Do you have a city that can withstand the rainfall that falls in this city? You can't keep pointing to nature. You've set up your city over here. This is where you do your global investors meet. So to suddenly say that this place received a lot of rainfall, I'm saying there'll be more rainfall than this. Are you capable of handling it? The tides come in 4 times. The tide comes in 2 times and drains out 2 times. So I heard that somebody else, a corporation official, saying that high tide is why the city flooded. High tide is why the city exists also. We are a coastal city. Tides are a part of our makeup, and so you have to design your city according to that. Don't tell us that you heard about the high tide only now, or about heavy rainfall during the northeast monsoon. So yes, it has made life more difficult, but can we hear the government say, maybe not now, in another week's time, say that we have messed up. Our development policies are messed up. That we have prioritized commercial, industrial, residential real estate over the security of the city. We have made a wrong decision in trying to push the Parandur airport, which will exaggerate and aggravate the floods in Adyar. And therefore, having recognized these things, we will not repeat the mistakes. We will not fill up the Ennur backwaters in the name of development. We will not treat water bodies and empty land as waste spaces to be developed and converted into industries and 5-star hotels. These are some of the realizations that need to come. We don't see that happening. In fact, I'm pretty certain that within 10 days it's going to be business as usual if the water disappears, with the same Same old development mantra, which would be, we will give you jobs, farmers vacate your lands. We will give you jobs, fisher folk get out. We will give you jobs, allow us to fill up your river. That's not going to work. You can't have a wetland mission that's got a 100 crore budget and then you have a 35,000 crore budget for destroying wetlands. The reason for our predicament right now is runaway urbanization, where the only thing that matters is concrete. And as long as there's concrete, everything is allowed. I mean, we have allowed for the intensification of the East Coast Road. That area's development rules were relaxed from a CRZ3, which is rural area, to CRZ2, which means intense urbanization. That area is your water aquifer, and you have allowed that to be covered with concrete. And then when you have a drought here, you will not have water, and then we'll be having the same conversation. So the problem for your scarcity and the problem for your flooding, the cost for your scarcity and the cost for your flooding are one and the same. It is your disregard for land's inherent value, open land's value, disregard for water, disregard for the people who know both land and water. So in very small things, even in small things like how you construct a speed breaker, most of the houses and the basements have been flooded because the road level is higher than the house level. Whose mistake is that? I mean, did the gods do that? Did excess rainfall do that? That has been done by bad engineers, by corrupt contractors, and by a regulator like the corporation that refuses to call them to account. So I think that the corporation staff right now and the corporation commissioner need not be on the defensive. This is not a mistake that he has created. This disaster was not created by him or her. It is unfortunate that this is a disaster that they have inherited. I would hate to be in his shoes. But what are you doing to admit or to come clean to the people about what mistakes have been made? People are also part of the mistake. So the first way to get out of this addiction is to admit that you are addicted to growth, to concrete, to real estate, to money, to whatever. And then let's figure out how we can move out of it. No, not always. In some places, probably yes. In very sparsely built areas, stormwater drains can have a very beneficial effect. In densely built up old areas, the density of construction on your biggest stormwater drain is the Adyar or the Kuam or the Kosasthalyar. So you can't be killing those rivers with elevated expressways on the Kuam, with all kinds of encroachments in power plants and ports and other things on the Kosasthalyar, with other things on the Adyar. You can't be killing those rivers and their floodplains and then build these puny stormwater drains. Those stormwater drains need to end up somewhere. And that somewhere needs to be healthy enough to carry the water that the stormwater drains bring. When the water goes above, the water in the river goes above the points through which stormwater enters the river, the water cannot enter the river. On the contrary, what happens is the river water starts pushing back up through the storm waters and floods areas as well. So stormwater drains may have a role to play in certain instances and may not have a role to play in others. But stormwater drains cannot be a solution for a city that refuses to stop growing. You can't just grow endlessly and hope that stormwater drains will be able to deal with the problem. What you have right now is an Adyar, a Kosasthalyar and a Kuam that are swollen. You have a sea that only allows you to drain the water for 12 hours. In between for 12 hours, so you have 6 high tide, 6 low tide, 6 high tide, 6 low tide. So for the 12 hours of high tide, your city won't drain. It'll have to wait for the next shift. And this river, which is already holding so much water because you've built up this entire area. So as you know, when you have open earth, when the water falls, it percolates. And only after the ground is saturated will it run off. If I close it with concrete, all the water that falls will run off. So it is not as if there is more intense rain. It just, what's happened here is you've built up a lot. So all the water that falls from the sky runs off and turns into a flood. The same thing will not happen in an area that is sparsely built. I think it's not a matter of blame. So is it that we are blaming the government? Means who else is responsible for the safety? Who gets the taxes? Who maintains staff? Who tells us constantly that everything will be okay? It is the government. Last year when there was rains and the water went away, did the government take credit for it? Yes, they did. So if they can take credit for it in a good year, they also need to take responsibility. It is not a matter of blame. Blame is a dirty thing. I'm not blaming. I'm questioning them. I'm asking them to be responsible. I'm asking them to admit mistakes where there are mistakes, not try to gloss over it. We're not idiots. So what needs to happen, the first thing that needs to happen is an admission. And it's okay to say we messed up. All of us do. So I think that would be a very big step. It requires very tall and courageous leaders to actually come out and admit that successive, it's not just this government, successive governments have done the same thing. So it is not as if the government that is in power now has to suddenly face the wrath of the government that was sitting in, or the party that's sitting in opposition, because the party that's sitting in opposition was the party in power in 2015. Right? So I think that it's not a blame game, it's not a comparison. I'm saying this is messed up, this is not the way it should be, this is not what we want for our city. And the first thing to do in this is accept with humility that you have messed up, that your development policies are messed up, that what you call development, what you've been telling us, that this is what brings in jobs, this is what we do, we know what we're doing, we've done environmental impact assessments, we have detailed master plans, admit that all that is bogus. Because if all these things are working and all these people who've been paid to make it work are actually legitimate wage earners, then we shouldn't be sitting in a disaster like this. And in this stage, if you're thinking about a third master plan and telling me to buy into that, doesn't that sound a bit weird? Where now you're saying that you're gonna urbanize 5,500 square kilometers, and this 5,500 square kilometers will also drain into the same 3 rivers.